Okay, welcome to round two of the doubleheader. Today we are going to be talking about plumbing. So we're going to talk about selecting kitchen plumbing. So much out there and so many finishes, so many different styles and things like that. You think you just need a sink and a faucet, but we have so much opportunity. Again, if you join me from the first webinar, that you'll find out that, depending on where you want to be with your budget, there's just so many things out there that can affect where our bottom line is. And so let's jump in. Okay. Again, if there's any questions, my name's John Hall, by the way, for people that are new. If there's any questions, you can just type them in and I'll either answer them or get back to you more one-on-one. And so let's get started. In the webinar, we're going to discuss various sink styles, sink materials. What's funny too is when we talked about the countertops and all that, is that a lot of this is going to be repetitive with the materials of sinks versus the materials of the countertops, stainless steel or quartz or things like that. We'll discuss finish options. We'll talk a little bit about faucets, discuss complementary plumbing fixtures, introduce sink accessories, and then answer questions. So when we talk about complementary plumbing fixtures, that could be anything from that air switch we talked about, or the water filtration or instant hots, things like that. And then a lot of the sinks today are going to come with accessories, from cutting boards to drain boards to colanders and all that. Okay, so let's start with sinks. The different types of sinks we have stainless steel, cast iron, fire clay, which one you probably have not heard of yet, quartz, stone. That could be soapstone, that could be, sometimes it even could be a granite, things like that. And where the stone has come in the past, well, I'll get into that in a little bit, but a lot of those farmhouse sinks from the past. Corian, I think that term should technically say solid surface, but Corian is the leader manufacturer of this, so I label it, always use Corian when I do sinks. Different ways of having the sink in the kitchen. We can have a single bowl, a double bowl, triple bowl. We'll talk about what self-rimming means, undermount, integral, farmhouse or apron front, high-low tile-ins, bar. Now, when we talk about these, okay, let's go back to the materials. I'll just give you, and when I say to people, it doesn't matter what the industry's doing. Sometimes you like to hear me give, statistics. Sometimes you say, you know what, John, I don't care what people are doing. It's what I want to do. And so I don't give a lot of merit to it, but I always let you know and give you a feel of what a lot of your friends are doing. And that on the material basis, I would say probably 60% stainless steel, 35% quartz, and then about 5% fire clay. That's about, and I don't sell much cast iron today. But that is, and then Corian, you say, well, John, what about Corian? What about that integral sink in Corian? A ton of it in bathrooms, not as much in kitchens. Now, styles. It would really, of the single, double, or triple, I would say probably, 60% single. Maybe 50-50. 50% single, 50% double. No triple bowls anymore. Triple bowls, when I started the business, was popular, not as much anymore, and I'll explain why when we get there. Okay, stainless steel. Now, this would be a very popular setting. You look at that, there's that quartz, that marble-looking quartz. There's a stainless steel sink. One of the things with stainless steel, let me throw some brands out you right away, that the sinks I like, and then you can start getting on websites. Franke, Franke, terrific sink. Blanco, Blanco. Julien's going to take you up more towards the high end of everything, but Julien. And then we also have Kohler, and I'm sure I'm missing a bunch, LK, things like that. But when you look at a stainless steel sink, and if you go on my website and look at my blogs and things like that, there's a lot of educational stuff there. But when you look at a sink, this is what I look at right away with stainless steel. Do you notice the corners? Now this sink, very, very attractive, but look how sharp the inside corner is. Now that's done very specifically for a reason, for the aesthetics on it. One of the negatives where people have gotten a lot of feedback over the years is, John, I can't keep that corner clean. I can't get in there to clean it. So what's happened is now there's going to be a term out there that some of the manufacturers are going to use, and that's what's referred to as a micro radius, where it's not that just absolutely squared off. It has a little bit of a radius to it. And then if you go look at maybe a stainless steel sink you have now, they might have all the standard radiuses. So this is the thing that, again, could you see, just by taking this webinar to gain, if you bought that sink and say, oh my God, I love the look of it, and then you can't clean it, and then say, oh, I am screwed because it's in my countertop and everything. So that's where you really want to go out and pay attention to that. So stainless steel, one option. One of the things with stainless is it is going to scratch. It's going to water spot. But there's ways that we can minimize the scratching, and there's effective things that you can put on for water spotting. But it's a very durable sink in general. A lot of when you start spending more money, you get better gauges. The other thing you get is on some of these sinks is sound deadening agents that are sprayed on the underside. So these are all the things that factor into the quality of the sink of the stainless. Cast iron, Old Faithful. I've sold a ton of cast iron sinks in my day. And the problem with the cast iron sinks, and Kohler was the leader, and they're terrific, is that they would chip, they would wear at the bottom. We've all grown up with them. We've all had these issues. And the reason that I don't do much of them anymore is because of fire clay. And you'll see what fire clay is going to add to the formula of our decision making. But this is a cast iron. Now, Kohler has said that, hey, you know what? We've taken care of a lot of those chipping and scratching issues. But, once I've had fire clay now and quartz, I really have not had the need for it. But one thing while we're on this slide, this is what's referred to as a low divide. Notice how low that center divide is. So if you said to me, you know what, John, I always wanted that single bowl because I can get large pots and pans in it, and I can do this, I can do that. Now all of a sudden you see you can have a double bowl sink, put a low divide in the center, and still have space for pots and pans and things like that. So that's referred to as a low divide. And that you'll find that with stainless, you'll find that with some of the quartz sinks too. Fire clay. Okay, John, what is this fire clay you're talking about? Okay, fire clay is basically a finish that has been applied to a clay substrate, and it has been thermally fused in, I think it's 2200 degrees, virtually indestructible. Won't chip, won't scratch, and it gets that look of cast iron. Now, what are the negatives of it? One of the big ones is the cost. It's going to be more expensive than your cast iron will be. The other, it's not going to give you all of the fancy designer colors, which you're probably not going to want anyway. It's not going to give you the fire engine red. It's not going to give you the black, things like that. But it gives you a lot of the great neutral colors. Comes in single bowls, comes in double bowls, comes in apron fronts. So fire clay, if you're looking for a sink that is really, really, really good and virtually indestructible, and you want that cast iron look, then you should look into fire clay. Franke, you'll find, and get on their websites, they'll explain it to you. Franke has great fire clay sinks. Kohler does. Rohl, R-O-H-L, and then Shaw, S-H-A-W. Those are some of the manufacturers. Let me give a shout out to the place that I like to use for plumbing, because I love the people there. If you want a great plumbing experience, you call Danny Wittenberg up at Edelman Plumbing on the east side here, set a time and talk to him. He's who I take all my clients to. Quartz, there's the quartz. Now, in the 10 o'clock and the 9 o'clock, we talked, that was one of the design tips of quartz sinks. Blanco is my favorite brand. You can get the best sink on the market, I think. I know, for like $500-600. And look there, look how great that looks. Now that's an apron front, doesn't have to be an apron front. But, you know, Blanco has a silicagranite sink that won't chip, won't scratch, won't stain, comes in some design colors. It's really, really effective. You can undermount it, which we'll talk about. So there's a look that you get there of what a quartz sink will look like. Corian, remember we talked about up front. This is an integral sink. The sink has been fused into the countertop. So anybody out there that says to me, John, what about cleaning up underneath these undermount situations? Okay. What about all the crap and crud that gets up in there? First of all, if it's done right, it's going to be minimalized. But if you want it totally, totally clean proof, then you go with what's referred to as an integral sink. And your stainless steel can do it also. You can get, if you want to buy a stainless steel countertop, you can do that also. So that's the Corian there. Now the Corian, what this is it's a made by DuPont, and Corian's been around forever. When I started in the mid 80s, everybody had Corian, okay? And Corian was a great product at that time. And you had to be a little careful about, you know, cutting on it and, you know, with showing the scratches and setting hot things on it and things like that. But it's really served its purpose over the years as a great solid surface material. It's just not as effective for me design-wise with what filling people's wants and needs as it is in bathrooms and things. This is a perfect countertop for a bathroom, or you'll see it a lot publicly in like restrooms when you go out, you know, when you used to go out at restaurants and hotels and things like that. Okay, now let's talk about the different sizes and everything and what to look for. Here's another clean look. This is what's referred to. See, this is more of a micro radius. It's even a little more generous, but still you get a nice, clean, sophisticated sink. Single bowl. Single bowl sinks are going to run average size wise. It depends on the material because of the weight, but you could get a stainless steel sink up to, oh, I would say probably up to 33 inches. Well, if you don't go with that galley sink, which we'll talk about in a couple minutes, but you know, I would say on average, you can go up to about 30 to 33 inches on a single bowl sink, which is really nice. One of the things to watch for, okay, and it's not a deal breaker, but where's the drain on the sink? I personally, you know, being really involved in the kitchen and dishes and things like that, in a perfect world, I would love to see my sink have that drain off to the upper right, so that if I have pots and pans and things in my sink, I can still get to that disposer without having to move things around. So just consider that when you're looking. And again, not a deal breaker, but something to, if it is offered and you're flipping a coin, which sink should you get, that would be where I would lean. Double bowls. Okay, with a double bowl sink, this is a popular double bowl sink. You know, one thing also, and you have to tell, if I'm your designer, you have to make note to me, is to say, I want a standard, you know, if you want double, I want a standard or I want an oversized. That's an oversized double bowl sink. A standard sink, if you have double now and you've grown up with it, the odds are it's 33 inches wide. It's called a 33-22, 33 wide, 22 deep. Now all of a sudden these sinks, you can go wider, which would take up to a 39 to 42 inch sink base. This sink here could be 38 inches wide, you know, it could be 4 or 5 inches wider. They're going to come, the other thing is this called a large small. So there's a lot of them out there to pick from. Like, how big do you want the small to be? Do you want it to be as big as this, or you say, you know, I just need it for the disposal and things like, and just rinsing. So I would rather have it more maximized and have a larger sink, you know, the bowl on the left. These are all things you're going to have to think about as you go through and start looking at sinks. This has the generous, again, stainless. See the generous, this is what we grew up with. See how you have that generous radius? Very easy to clean, as opposed to, there's more of your micro right there. See, that's a much sharper, more modern type of look. And I threw it in here, not that you're gonna maybe want it, or you might, who knows, your triple bowl. So what I've done is I've just allowed up to a 48-inch sink base, thinking, oh my goodness, you're getting a huge sink. Look at that, you're getting 3 small sinks. So again, is that something for you? I don't know, but I always, when I look at that sink, I always think Cleveland Heights. I remember back in the 80s and early 90s, always when I was redoing kitchens, they all had triple bowl sinks in the older homes, and just taking them all out. Bar sinks. Okay, we can get into bar sinks. We can get into vegetable sinks. So when we get into a bar sink, usually people are going to go anywhere. I would say, what's interesting about bar sinks? And I don't know if anybody out there is thinking of a bar sink or doing a bar. I'm taking those doggone things out. I've got 3 jobs over the last month where I visited people and they say, get it the hell out of here. They don't use it, you know. So people really are not doing as much with bar sinks today. But usually about 12 to 15 inches, you could have some really interesting, you could do exotic metals. There's a lot of interesting things we can do with that. But that's about the width of it. Now, people, the flip side of that, got a lot of people. If you were with me at 10 o'clock, we talked about, more and more people are getting involved in the kitchen, husbands, wives, children, things like that. So vegetable sinks are really coming around strongly. A vegetable sink, again, the width, it's going to be the same principles as far as materials, matching the main sink. Um, I would allow anywhere up to a 24-inch sink base cabinet for it, because you're going to find bar sinks that can go anywhere from, vegetable sinks from 15 to 22 inches in width. And so that's something to think about. The other thing I did not cover, I might as well just talk about it right now, the depth of a sink. It's not just the width, it's the depth from top to bottom. So what's happening is, do you want a deeper sink? Some people want the deeper sinks. Now, the only negative with deeper sinks is you'll run into more money in the cost factor, but then you also have to consider the splattering, with the water all around and things like that, the deeper the sink. It is nice because you can get large pots and pans in there. Some people, if there's anybody out there is more, on the shorter end of things, bending over and getting into that deep sink, it could create more of issues. And there's ways around that, which I'll show you in a moment, but that's something that you have options on too, is going to be the depth. The average sink in depth that you have at home is usually anywhere from 7 to 8 inches. Now you're going to find anywhere from 9 to 11. Even if you're undermounting, you're going to gain an extra inch. You can see this one here looks a little more shallow. This is probably here, I don't know the material, but if I'm a guessing man, that's probably fire clay right there. That's what a fire clay sink would look like. Self-rimming. Self-rimming is where it sits on top. Where I use self-rimming sinks a lot would be in laundry rooms, not as much in kitchens today, because people are getting away. Everybody wants to use the term called undermounting, which you'll see in a moment. But with this right here, you can see it sits up on top. Now, where would you use this? You would use this if you listened to my countertop one 2 weeks ago, you would see that we talked about the laminates for mica and things like that. That's where you would use that, because you cannot undermount a sink there. A lot of you, if you have an older kitchen, you're looking to remodel, you probably have self-rimming right now, and you probably hate it, trying to get that butter knife and everything underneath to get the gook out of there. There's the undermount sink. Now, the undermount, again, is using clipping up underneath. This is more of a clean modern type feel, because that countertop, remember we talked about the countertops being very thin as in. So look at that, you got a very thin countertop. Look at the gold faucet, which we'll talk about in a moment. But the main thing I want to talk about with this sink, I want to take a moment and talk about, if any of this interests anybody. This is not brass, this is not gold. What's happening now, and black stainless was very popular about 2 years ago. I don't know how much it's taken off. My clients haven't jumped on the ship with it, but what's happening is they're now infusing colors into stainless steel. So this is a gold infused stainless steel sink, where you're going to have all the properties of stainless with the gold look. And they've had that done with black and copper and things like that, where they can infuse the stainless so you can get that type of look. The other thing, when you say, well, we'll come to it on the accessories. I'll wait till then. There's the integral again. See, it's all molded. That's a nice look, you know, to get in there and mold it and to get that look with it. We can do apron front sinks. Apron front will come in, I showed you the quartz example, comes in stainless. It comes in the fire clay, it comes in cast iron. It's a nice clean look. Notice also, I think we talked about this a couple weeks ago, but look what's on the left there. It's actually a composting trash. So you can lift up, put all your scraps and things like that right in there and take it out. Or you could use it as a secondary little trash can and build it right into the countertop. Double bowl, apron front stainless. That sink up on the top there, that was talk about a gimmick. That sink. They I don't know, whoever designed that. They also had the look like a snake, you know, like a curve running down it. The only thing I'd ever effective for with people would be to put their Coronas in, you know, and their beers or appetizers or things like that. But really, really in an effective sink. I don't even know if you'll see that much of that out there anymore today. But that is that very thin looking sink there. But there's the, again, you could see the farmhouse single bowl. Here's the galley sink that I talked about in design tips earlier. This is a water station. Now all of a sudden we can get a sink, okay, and it'd be interesting for you guys just to get on there and look, you know, at all the different options and things you can do with that. And even Kohler, you're now starting to see other companies do takeoffs of this, but this was designed by a chef out of Chicago, and it just has so many different options that you can use in the sink, colanders and drain boards and cutting boards. And you can see it's two-tier, that one level slides under the other. They have something for condiments and turns into a little bar station, knife holders, just on and on and on as far as the accessories go. And then when you're done using the sink, you can put a cover on it and use it as additional space for entertaining if you want to set up a buffet or just don't like the look of the sink, things like that, where you can just go and cover it. So it has a lot of nice features to it. This sink, you'll start probably with accessories around 4,000 and go on up. Okay, let's talk about some accessories. The cutting board with a lot of the sinks, I don't do pull-out cutting boards anymore. A lot of times what the people want is they want to have a portable cutting board by the sink where, see this one, it actually clips in and it's a perfect fit into the sink. So when you're cutting and things, and when usually you do your cutting, you're gonna do it right by the sink. Even they have the colanders that you could see over there on the left. Let's say you go strawberry picking and come in and set it all in the colander, which is really a nice touch. Here's what I promised to talk about if you wanted a deeper sink, or let's say you're nervous about the sink and the stainless, you want to minimize any type of scratches on the floor or things like that. They're called sink grids. They're really nice. And what that does, it'll protect the bottom and it will also raise up to you to the level that you pretty much want it at, you know, to put that sink grid. I would strongly suggest sink grids. And a lot of this stuff can be ordered later. You know, there's again, a cutting board that was made for that sink. So you could see that when they want to use that, they would just clip that right on. This is something people love, and you don't need to use it with, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's Franke. In fact, I'm almost positive. This drain board actually rolls up, okay, like a piece of paper. So you could see there it's gone, and that's a rubber outside matting, but you could go there, and when you want to use it, just throw it over your sink, and then when you're done with it, it rolls up like aluminum foil, and you just tuck it away. Really, really nice. People like that a lot. Okay, this is what I was jumping to last night. I said, we'll wait till the slide. when you get, let's say, that gold infused stainless sink or a black infused stainless sink, or remember we talked about Blanco, with the beautiful quartz colors, you can now get color coordinating drains and also the flanges for the disposer. So how many of you are really in touch? I mean, could you see putting a beautiful gold sink in and then having the plumber put in a chrome drain? Or same thing, you have that opportunity with the Blanco to go, and if you're going to use the cafe color or any of the platinum colors or things like that, where we can go ahead and match with that. Faucets. Not going to dwell on the faucets. There's so many out there. Again, I would recommend go see Danny, and he can really, really help you. I will tell you this, my favorite brand for the dollar is the Delta Breezio. And the Delta Breezio, what I love about it is most people want the single hole pull down spray. And that pull down spray over the years has always driven me crazy, where it wouldn't snap back into place because it had a magnet underneath on the wire that would go down, and gravity would push it back down. So now what's happening is there's a patent on that pullout. It has a magnet and it snaps back into place with the Delta Breezio. And they have beautiful different styles. We talked earlier today about the difference going to having a transitional kitchen. You want it to look a little more modern, a little more contemporary. They have all different styles on their faucets too. Really nice. All different types. There's a special, more institutional looking one. You can also have it as a side spray. Not as popular today. But if you want more of a traditional style, so if somebody's doing a very traditional kitchen, there's something called a bridge handle faucet, where it's actually bridged, exposed up over the counter. It would not have a pull down where you could go and do a side pull down there. Single handles, you can also do double handles. Then you can get into, there's about that 12-inch wide beverage sink. You can go into your beverage faucets. Miscellaneous fixtures. Instant hots. I always remember when I tell this, look at this, it brings back memories. When I was back in high school and my sister was going off to college, and what my parents got her, she was going into nursing school, they got her one of these little things that you put into a cup of coffee or a cup of hot water, and it warmed your water for you. This was before microwaves, you know? And so that would get water for tea for them as they go off to school. And then all of a sudden, the inventions of microwaves come, and everybody was excited. They could warm up their coffee and get their boiling water for tea and everything. And then we get so spoiled over the years, and all of a sudden we want that instant hot. And there it is. So now we can do it, and we can put it right there for that instant tea right at the sink. I will warn you, if I were you, I would, if you ever go on vacation, turn that instant hot off. Basically what it is, it's a hot water tank under your sink. And what you need to do, even if you're not using it all the time for the hot water, you need to go and turn it on for a minute and relieve some of that pressure. But Murphy's Law, if anybody out there is a believer in Murphy's Law, the minute you're gone on vacation, that tank goes and you flood your first floor. So I'm not a huge person on that. That'll add anywhere from, that's one of these, oh geez, by the time you run the electrical line, plumb it, and buy it, you're probably close to $1,000. I would say anywhere from $750 to $1,000. And you can even do the dual, there's that bridge faucet, by the way, what I was talking about. You can even do the dual handle and the dual instant hots, where you can do filtered room temperature water and then the hot water. Lotion dispensers, very popular. Now, people in the past, they've had one 20 years ago, I don't want it because I have to get under the sink and unscrew to fill it. Not anymore. You just lift that up and you pour the soap in. Very popular. Water filtration. Earlier we talked about, remember, don't have the water filtered off the main faucet. What you want to do is filter it as a separate side thing, because then you won't restrict the flow. And there's a lot of times you use water, like for dishes and things like that that you don't need to have filtered water. Disposers. Disposers are sort of, yeah, just get me one, okay? But something to think about is the horsepower. Like how much horsepower do you need in a disposer? I am a big believer of instant. I love to uh, use InSinkErator. And InSinkErator is a great brand that I use. And I usually like a 3/4 to 7/8 horsepower. Now, when I deal with people in the medical profession, they will say to me, you know what, I'm always been very nervous about disposers. Is there a way around the danger? And yes, there is. It is called a batch fed disposer. Now, what is a batch fed disposer? Actually, this is the handle. So that disposer will not operate unless you put it in and turn it. And that way, your hands can't get down there, kids, anybody, because it won't turn on until that is in there sealed and turned. And that's what's referred to as a batch fed. It will significantly increase your cost of your disposer. But if anybody out there is with small children, or if you're in the medical profession and you know what I'm talking about, then that is something out there for you. It's referred to as a batch fed. Here's something I always present. It came out about 2 years ago. Nobody's ever jumped on it. I would love it. You know, when my daughter's home from school, she drives me crazy with always making her smoothies and not rinsing the glass completely. But now, inexpensive, I believe this is Delta, that you can go and put your glass upside down on it, and it senses and it sprays and rinses the glass for you. So that would be right on there with your faucet and then drain right back into your sink, which is really nice. Not expensive. There's the air switch. Okay, so that air switch will turn on and off your disposer. You know, match the finishes too with the sink. Okay, let's now talk about finishes. Now, here's the thing, and I don't want to overwhelm you. I'm going to show you something from a website, California Faucets, which has a ton of finishes. I'm going to go through and explain the more popular finishes, and then you also have the opportunity as you go through. And if anybody's also doing a bathroom and going to be in my bathroom classes and things, that's where it really comes into play as far as matching towel bars and your shower doors and things like that, where you have a lot more trouble. In a kitchen, you should be able to have all the finishes pretty much match. Might restrict yourself with the hardware of the cabinetry, but let's jump in and let's show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so here are the different finishes. I'm not going to dwell on each one. There's probably about 15 or 20 of these, but you can see here, polished chrome popular, satin nickel popular, antique brass, so-so. The black, very popular today. Okay, and you can see with this one website, they even have a Bella Terra bronze and, you know, a lot of different things, antique coppers. But most of what you're going to find with most of them, like Delta and Moan and, you know, some of these other brands like Franke or, you know, a lot of different Hans Grohe, things like that. They're going to stay more in the basic finishes. Okay, just on and on. There's our old faithful polished brass, different types of bronzes. Whites are not popular. Burnished nickel. Okay, one of the big winners to me, okay, so here's a real winner to me, is the polished nickel. And polished nickel, it's hard to see when you go back from slide to slide, but what that does, it adds a beautiful golden cast to chrome. So if you want a traditional kitchen, I mean, polished nickel is really gorgeous. It'll add a little more to the price, but it is something that's available. So the standard, what I would refer to as the standard finishes with a lot of the faucets you're going to find is going to be your chrome. It's going to be your brushed stainless or brushed nickel. It's going to be your polished nickel on some of these faucets. And then also it's going to be black, if you like that black look. And then when you go into more of the higher end, then you'll go into more of the golds and some of these other ones. Okay, so that's what to look for finishes. Now, the big thing though about this, and again, it'd be very helpful for you bathroom people out there, are going to be what happens and what some of the flexibility is with this stuff here. Let's talk about these different finishes. Okay, so when you get into chrome, chrome's pretty elementary. Highly reflective finish, very durable, low maintenance, easy to clean. Polished chrome is easy to match with accessories. That's where I went through and talked about all this. So that's chrome. What is PVD? So here's the thing in a nutshell between what I'm calling PVD and what I'm calling a living finish. Okay. What PVD is, basically, it is it's a state-of-the-art process, creates a molecular bond to the faucet, resulting in the most durable finish available. The bottom line is it's a maintenance-free finish on the faucet that you don't have to worry about tarnishing and things like that. So a lot of these finishes are going to have it. Now, when you run into is this to be careful of. Again, more in the bathroom, but you have to understand in the kitchen. So let's say you saw one of these finishes and you were absolutely loving it. If it's a living finish, okay, no two fittings look exactly alike because they age and patina over time. So I was working with somebody, I am working with somebody on a bathroom. We took 2 hours picking a faucet. And at the end of the day, they said, I don't want to have the issue of the maintenance, and I don't want to have the issue of it looking, different than when I put it in. I don't want to have that copper look, and things like that. So you have to be careful with that living finish, especially in a kitchen. The odds of you coming across that, unless you're going to some of the different specialty finishes like the coppers and things, you're probably not going to be addressing it. If you're staying with a lot of the deltas and that, this is not going to be an issue. It's all going to be the PVD finish. Okay. Satin nickel, there's the satin nickel again, or the brushed nickel, or the brushed stainless. It gives you that nice striated look. So you'll see a lot of that. Power coated. Anybody comes to me and says, help me with my kitchen, and I want a European kitchen, John, powder coating, and you'll find it also with the blacks and things like that. It's basically it's a system where they powder coat it, and they protect it with a clear powder coating designed to allow the underlying color to show through and provide a layer of protection. So what that means is we can get some of with the European, some of the real designer colors like the reds and the blues and things like that. Let's say we have a cabinet color out of Germany with a blue lacquer. They will powder coat hardware and to that same blue, and then put a protection layer on it. So that comes into play. One thing also that is very popular today is mixing metals. So if you go back and look at some of the things in my talks, in my webinars, and also in my blogs on my websites and things, I'm always talking about mixing metals. 3 years ago, that was voodoo. You just didn't do it. And now all of a sudden they promote it, like mixing golds and blacks and mixing this and that. So that's an opportunity where you can go in and have a lot of fun today mixing metals, where you don't have to worry about everything matching exactly. So, okay, so that brings us to the end of this webinar. And what we have available to you, again, the design guide. We have a lot of regulars out there. If you don't have that design guide from me yet, it's a whole book. You can contact me. I'd be happy to get you one out there. Listen, 1 o'clock, we're doing a whole class. You should have a link for that if you're interested. And that's about 2 hours. And then 2 weeks from now, we're going to talk about cabinetry, and we're going to talk about flooring. Okay. So if you have any questions, you can get to me or email me or things like that. If you have need some design help, I can help with design. If anybody needs some design assistance, or if you need help with your project, you can always give me a call, 216-870-2644, or my website is thehalldesignGroup.com, and my email is john@thehalldesignGroup.com. Okay, again, thank you guys. I hope you're enjoying these things, and we'll look forward to seeing your names and faces in the future. Bye-bye.